Got the 1/16 Summit disassembled all down to the gearboxes and the bulkheads, the front and rear bulkheads. The front and rear bulkheads are what I'm working on now. I'll be taking these apart and installing the diff lockers in the front and rear, and that's what I'll be going through on this video.
Team Baxter.
So here's the front and rear bulkheads. These provide power to the wheels from the main shaft, output shaft coming from the motor. I've got everything disassembled. The next thing I need to do is actually pop the gearboxes open and remove these differentials, because that's where the diff lockers go. Just real quick, the unlocked diffs allow the shafts to spin in different directions. I have toothpicks inserted in here so that you can see, hold this one straight up, and it allows this one to still move. That's your diffs in action. When I install the diff lockers, these two toothpicks, well, the two shafts, in this instance, the toothpicks, they will not move independently. They will be moving together. Something like that. There will be no independent movement. So that's what I'm working on now. I'll take this whole gearbox apart, clean it up a little bit, and then I'll start installing the diff lockers into the diffs. Got the rear bulkhead open with the diff out, and I'm pulling the last screw, holding the front bulkhead together. And I'll pop it open and pull the diff out here as well. So this one's held a little bit tighter by the steering hardware. Just takes a little prying to get that open and separate the two halves along with that piece of steering hardware. And there's your diff. Again, front diff. Now I've taken pictures so I can remember how to orientate these when they go back together, and set it down. We'll move these out of the way and start working on these two diffs. I'm pulling these moving differentials out with this thick oil in there, and I'm going to put these diff lockers in. This is Traxxas part number 7381. Get two diff lockers in each bag. I got these from my local hobby shop for about $3. I'm going to pull these diffs apart and install them. It's a pretty simple disassembly. 3 screws. Pull the diff cap off. We're going to remove the gears, drop the diff locker in, clean it up a little bit, and close it back up. Get all this muck cleaned up from the outside. You can see, re-lube it, clean the bulkhead, the gearbox up a little bit, and get them reinstalled. So I'm taking this 1.5 millimeter hex and removing the 3 screws that hold the cover on, so we can get into and remove the internal gears from the diff. So now we pull this thing apart. See, it's filled with that nasty used up silicone grease. You can see those 3 gears in there. Those are what we're going to be pulling out. That's what allows the moving action, and that's what we don't need anymore. So those will be coming out, and the diff locker gets dropped right in there, and it pretty much renders the opposite gear ineffective. So pop those right on out. So I got them cleaned up just a little bit, and now I'm going to continue with the diff locker install. Get this pack open. So we're going to pull the shaft out and pull that other gear off and drop the diff locker with the slotted holes onto the pin. It gets pushed back in to place, and this goes into the corresponding holes. It's that simple. And then it gets closed up. Same thing's going to happen on this side. I'm going to pop that gear off. Slide the diff locker on in place of where the gear was. And slip that into the box. This will all get screwed together, and then you have a lock differential. It was a little tricky getting the holes aligned, but I finally got them aligned. And you screw back in the original 3 screws that you took out. I like to get them in place first and then tighten them down after I've got them all screwed in. So tighten those down, not too much, so you don't strip out the plastic piece on the other side. Just snug it. And there's your lock diff. So now these picks will not rotate independently as that diff is locked up. And do the same thing with the other one, and then get the bulkheads cleaned up and get them installed in there. So I've completed the process on both differentials now. So I have 2 lock axle differentials. I put the gear set away for future use in case I ever want to reverse this process, which is just entail pulling the diff lockers out and reinstalling the gears. So put this in my spare parts bin. While I'm still doing this, while I'm removing all the differentials, the center differential has been installed in this 1/16 Summit. So I'm going to lock the center differential back up as well so that it doesn't spin independently. And then all my diffs will be locked all the way around the truck. So I'm going to pull the center diff out of this center gearbox, clean it up, and put the original locked center diff back in, close it up, and go from there. So now I have the gearbox torn apart, and I need to replace this center differential with this lock center differential. It'll involve pulling out all these gears and putting this in. I'm gonna re-lube the whole gearbox while I'm in here and then seal it back up. Well, I've got the transmission torn apart. I'm gonna install the new motor plate for the 550 size motor. So it's TRA7380, and it's just a larger motor plate. I'm gonna install that instead of putting the stock plate back on. So here's the front and rear diff now locked, along with the center transmission, which is locked as well. These will be installed back in the gearboxes after I get the gearboxes cleaned up, along with the center transmission will go back in the chassis. Also, I want to mention that I tightened my slipper all the way down. This may or may not be something you want to do depending on if you want to avoid damage or not. Putting a pretty strong motor in there, this may destroy my drive shafts, but I'm willing to take that risk. If the drive shafts are destroyed, that just means to me that they need to be strengthened, so I'm willing to take the risk. So I think typical procedure is to back it off a quarter turn, but I have tightened it all the way down and will not be backing it off at all.